My theory or prediction of astrology is that it has a psychological effect or influence on microorganisms. Understanding that psychology is not a fictional mental place, but a physical projection of energy, in the same way that a chair or the color of your walls can affect your psychology. And microorganisms being the sublimity of all nature, life, death, disease, change, fortune, fates, karma, synchronicity, serendipity, collective unconscious, all those kinds of ideas and concepts that loosely indicates some sort of conscious, intelligent background force that leads to and leads up to events and causes events, right? The kind of motivation of nature and life itself. All those things which are referenced as being under the sort of archetypal connection to astrology. But my working knowledge of astrology is fairly limited and nuanced. I know some of the broad precepts and some of the alchemical and ancient use or understanding of astrology, different body rulerships of the zodiac, some physiognomy connections, and I Ching connections. But in terms of astrology itself, I don't know too much, and so that's what I'm currently trying to learn, because I have some ideas on how to test or measure astro-microbial connections and relationships. I didn't want to learn astrology first. I wanted to learn celestial navigation and timekeeping. I imagine before the ancient science of astrology really became so structured in each culture, it began through celestial navigation and timekeeping, because this will show us why and how astrology started to develop. And obviously evidence of this use goes back tens of thousands of years in ancient megalithic sites and cave paintings and wall art. So in this video, I want to share some of that celestial navigation and timekeeping. Of course, the most obvious one is finding the North Star, or Polaris. This star points towards the North Pole. The reason the North Star is so reliable is because if you're in the center of the North Pole, you could draw a straight line up to the North Star, which means no matter where you're looking at the North Star, you're looking at the point directly above the North Pole. But the North Star also tells you your latitude if you're above the equator. If you're at the 0 degree in the equator, the North Star is going to be right on the horizon, which means when you're directly under the North Pole, you're at the 90 degrees because it's right above you. So everywhere in between, you know that you have a 0 degree point here and a 90 degree point here, and the North Star is going to be somewhere in between that. Of course, you could use an instrument to find the exact latitude, but you can generally see if you're around 40 degrees, 30 degrees, 20 degrees, so on. Of course, we all know the easiest way to find the North Star is through the Big Dipper. In medieval Arabia and other parts of the world, a simple eye test was conducted trying to find the second star in the handle of the Big Dipper. If you could see both of the stars here, you had good eyesight, and this could even determine your role in a military position. In summer nights, the constellation Scorpius will tell you where south is. This is the head of Scorpius, and when these stars next to it are forming a vertical line, that points to south. In April, if you find the Leo constellation, when the stars Zosma and Curtin form a vertical line, that means you're also looking south. In the summer, Aquila can be used to find east and west. This constellation rises in the east and sets in the west. So if you have an object as a reference point and you notice after half an hour it's rising, then you're looking east, and if it's starting to descend, you're looking west. Similar, in the winter, Orion rises in the east and sets in the west. The famous belt, of course, is the easiest to see, and Mintaka is the brightest of these. Under his belt is a part called Orion's Sword. When it is directly underneath, it points to true south. You can also find out what month you're in. If you're looking south at around 10:30 p.m., the constellation you see will tell you which month you're in. Obviously, this varies depending on your part of the world, but in the US, if you see Sirius and Orion, you're in January. The head of the Hydra, you're in February, and the body of the Hydra, you're in March. The Crater constellation is April, the Virgo constellation is May, Libra is in June, Scorpius is in July, Sagittarius will be in August, and Capricorn in September. Aquarius in October, Cetus in November, and Taurus in December. Obviously, this is different from how astrology categorizes it, because that's based off of how the sun processes through the zodiac, and not where the constellation is facing south. As we orbit around the sun, certain stars become invisible as the light of the sun overtakes them. When the star becomes visible again, it's called a heliacal rising. The term dog days comes from the heliacal rising of Sirius, which is attached to the constellation Canis Major, or the dog constellation. This happens in August when it's getting hottest. The Aboriginals of Australia used the heliacal rising of Arcturus to know when they could go to the coast and hunt magpie geese. It also indicated when they could collect wood ant larvae. In the North American Arctic Inuit, they used a constellation, which was a combination of Aquila and Altair, to know when the hunting season began. Its appearance marked when bearded seals were going to go from the sea to the shores. All over the ancient world, humans used the appearance and disappearance of the constellations and planets to tell when certain events and seasonal changes were occurring, whether they were preparing for a flood season, harvest season, or hunting season. You can even use Polaris and the Big Dipper to tell the time. That takes a few steps to explain, so I'm not going to go over it right now. There's even ways of seeing how far away you are from the city or town based off of the light pollution. Or vice versa, if you know the population of a town or city, you can know how far to go to start seeing the stars more clearly. This also means if you're lost or traveling, when you stop seeing stars as much, you know you're getting closer to a town or city. Those are just a couple examples of many, many different techniques and signs that the stars and their positions can tell you about your location or time or for navigation. I think having a practical understanding of celestial navigation and timekeeping is important for understanding how and why astrology came to be. Other than possible subconscious or superconscious influences, the actual science of astrology developed from these sorts of indication. While one constellation may tell you when hunting season is beginning, you may associate another constellation with fortune in battle, or you're going to have an ill-omened event. Maybe you're going to get injured, and so you can avoid going out that day. And then you have this idea of the natal chart, which is a sort of screenshot of the celestial positions from the time you're born. So we might be able to conclude that the culture which used the constellation to find when it's time to hunt, if you were born right when that constellation is appearing, you would probably be considered to be a great hunter, or that's the path that your life will likely take. I could go on more, but I think this works as just a good preliminary sort of intro to astrology and to what would probably be called Astro-Microbiology or something like that. I hope this was interesting, though. Maybe everybody already knew all of those things about celestial navigation. I just learned them recently and thought it was very fascinating and wanted to share it. But thanks for watching.